Hello, this is Pablo, and I just did something that I don't think has ever been done before. I took one of these electric skateboards and I rode it all the way from my house in Brooklyn, New York to Washington, D.C. The whole trip took about 4 days and I recorded everything on a 360 camera. And I uploaded it to Instagram and TikTok. However, I wanted to make a longer horizontal format video and upload it on YouTube, and that's what I'm doing here. I think that would show the beauty of the places that I passed more, and it would allow the viewer to appreciate the scenery a lot better on horizontal format. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I did, or at least a fraction of how much I enjoyed making this trip and making this video. Okay, so here you can see I'm starting off in Brooklyn. This is the Williamsburg Bridge. I live in Williamsburg, so this is the closest bridge to me, and it's actually pretty close to my house. One of the first things you notice here is that I'm barely moving, and I keep looking down, and that's because the bag is shaking, and it doesn't look very stable, and I'm worried that it's going to fall off onto the side. So that was as you'll see later on, I changed it. Obviously that wasn't going to work, but that's why I kept looking down, and that's why I was just kind of checking all the time right now. And I made it to, this is only 5 miles to the ferry that I'm riding to, so I didn't bother to stop and fix it here, but I just kept looking down and being worried that it was going to fall over. In any case, this is a beautiful bridge. This is probably one of the most beautiful bike paths, bridge bike path in New York City. It's bike paths in general are not nice in New York City. I avoid bike paths completely if I can, except when you have to cross a bridge, because you can't really take, if you look on the left side, it's all cars, there's no shoulder, you can't really take that, although some people have. It's not something that we do. Oh, you see the water here. It just rained this morning, and that's one of the reasons why I was late. I woke up at 6:30. This was on a Wednesday. Oh, here's the train passing by, the metro, which runs alongside the Williamsburg Bridge, and I ended up it's not being able to ride because the roads were wet, and I didn't want to leave with the roads so wet, even though I could have potentially done it because this board had 7-inch tires and it's pretty well insulated, but I didn't want to do that, so I just waited. I went to eat, and then I was biding my time, hoping it would just dry off, and it dried off and off, but you could see that there's still some water on the roads. But it didn't affect the ride at all. That's one of the reasons why I chose to take this board, is because it's very very well insulated, and I didn't really worry about that. But yeah, it had just rained, and as you can see, it's a beautiful bridge, but it's bumpy. It's quite bumpy, and that was the end of that. And then I took the Staten Island ferry. This is the only time that I cheated. This was a 5-mile cheat because I wasn't riding it. I was taking the ferry. But this was the only time that I actually did that for the entire trip, but it was necessary to get to Staten Island. And this footage now here is in Staten Island. Staten Island, I had done this ride before when I think the previous weekend, and I like these roads. It has really nice asphalt, very smooth. It wasn't early in the morning anymore, but you could see I had the road to myself. And I already changed the bag. I put it more vertical so that it aligns better with the skateboard, and this was a much better setup, and so I wasn't worried anymore at that point that it was going to fall over, and I was able to kind of enjoy the ride at that point. So this is one of the things that we do in New York City. We ride in the middle instead of the shoulder, because the shoulder is full of crap and pedestrians, and the middle, it's really just a safer place to ride. If you veer off into oncoming traffic, then they can see you coming, you can see them coming, and you can usually just avoid them much easier than somebody just stepping onto your way on the bike path. And then this is crossing over to Jersey. This I've never done before. This is the Goethals Bridge, and it's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous bridge. I had never taken this before. This is obviously uncharted territory for me. Now I've gone beyond the point where I've ever ridden past before, and so I decided to film it. It was a hot day. I mean, it was really hot, but it was beaming down on me. But it looked beautiful. You can see I'm heading to Jersey, and I'm crossing over from Staten Island, and this will put me in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Yeah, I'm just gonna let you enjoy the rest of these footage because I think it's beautiful. Here I'm kind of really excited about this trip already because this was a nice bridge to take, and I was just feeling it at this point. So here we are getting to Jersey now, and this is a trail. So you will see that most of this footage, I'm pretty isolated. I'm on my own because I would make it a point not to take out the camera when I was in a busy highway or on the shoulder, or there was a lot of cars around, or there was things that require my attention. So that's why a lot of this footage is like in nice trails where I have the entire road to myself, and I feel safe enough in taking out the camera and just filming it. And also it looks beautiful. I wish I could have filmed the more busy roads where there was more cars. I think that would have been interesting as well. But I was trying to be safe, and I didn't want to be doing too many things at once. I had the speaker on me. You can see there on the right hand side, and I was not playing music at all the entire trip. It was strictly for navigation. I was listening to the navigation system giving me instructions, which failed me, by the way, in Jersey, because by the way, this is a really nice shot here because I started filming these because it goes right alongside a river, and it was just a beautiful ride. You can see the river there on the right hand side. But going back to the navigation system, I wasn't using originally when I started in Jersey, or I started in Brooklyn. I was using a different app. I wasn't using Google Maps, or I wasn't using Apple Map. I was using a bike map app for navigation, and at some point it lost connection, and it stopped giving me directions, and somehow I ended up on the highway, and then I got lost, and then I got a flat because when you're riding on the highway, you have to ride on the shoulder, and the shoulder is full of glass, full of nails, full of crap. I got a flat. I got two flats actually, and so that was a really bad experience. Fast forward all of that, and I'm all the way in Princeton now, Princeton, New Jersey, where I had to stop for the last stop. I just did a really quick charge of 30 minutes there in that library to the left. Princeton is a really beautiful place, and this was my first time in Princeton actually. I used to live in Jersey and I never went to Princeton, but it's so beautiful. I would definitely go back there just to hang out in the libraries or ride the streets. They have beautiful streets. By the way, all of Jersey has beautiful streets. People who live in Jersey have really pristine asphalt, and it was a pleasure. It was probably the best streets out of all the states that I went through. The streets in Jersey were the most well kept streets of any other state that I went through on my way down. So I think there's really, yeah, this takes me into a trail. So the next shot over here is going to cut into a trail, which is also all by myself, and I was really enjoying it because it was just beautiful in just you and your own. Nobody else was in this trail. I mean, I saw maybe one or two other people in here, but that was it. It was just me riding this trail. And this trail connects, I guess, right into Pennsylvania, and it connects right into the bridge that takes you into Morrisville, which is well, I guess it cuts through Trenton, and it takes you into Pennsylvania, and that's where I stayed the first night. So this is really the end of the first day here that you're seeing. The next shot is going to be me on the bridge that's taking me from New Jersey to Morrisville, Pennsylvania. So here's the bridge. I wish I knew the name. I don't know the name. It was a nice little bridge with a hardwood floor, and it was a beautiful lake. Sorry, river. And yeah, I was basically at my destination, and this was the end of day one. So this is the beginning of day two, and I'm just on the road now in Pennsylvania, and I remember just seeing a stark difference in the roads. Pennsylvania roads are really some of the worst roads, even by their own residents' standards that I saw. Although here, this one is pretty smooth. I'm riding over here. I think it's like a residential area that I went through before I get to Philly proper. Most of the riding that I did, even though it looks kind of rural or suburbia, it's already Philly. I think this is already part of Philly. Most of the footage that you're gonna see here is part of Philly, and you can see here, yeah, this is more urban now. You're starting to get into Philly proper, and this was actually a really nice, freshly paved street. So I was filming it, but it's not representative of really the roads in Philly or in Pennsylvania in general. But I just liked it so much that I took out my camera and started filming it. And also, I wanted to get some shots of the city and me riding in the city. There's a shoulder there that I could have ridden, but I kept looking back and I saw that nobody was riding on this lane, and there was really very light traffic. So whenever there's a chance for me to ride in the car lanes, I will take the car lanes any day, because usually even on a freshly paved road, the shoulder is more dangerous for me anyway. And at this point, I'm riding between 15 and 25 miles for most of the way. There was a few spots where there was no shoulders, and I had to ride on the car lane, where I would had to just go full throttle, 31 miles an hour. I never switched to turbo. Turbo will take me up to 36 miles an hour, but that wasn't my intention. I didn't want to. This was my strategy for throughout the whole trip, is to just take it easy, keep it between 15 and 25 miles an hour, and that would give me the most range out of this board. If I was gunning it the whole time at 30 miles an hour, I would have killed the battery, and I just wouldn't have gotten as far as I did. So I needed to take it easy and just keep it between 15 and 25. Even 25 was too fast, but at some points you just gotta go. You got no choice. So I'm not sure exactly where I am in here, but it's got to be somewhere downtown Philly, because this is well, I do know I can recognize the Chinese signs. I'm entering Chinatown, in Philly. So Chinatown is usually located somewhere downtown in any city. So I'm somewhere downtown. That's all I know. But I thought, even though it was a busy street, it was chill enough that I would just take the camera and film it, because it was one of the busiest streets I passed, and also it was beautiful. I think Chinatown is always beautiful, no matter what city you're in. So yeah, this is it. Going through the arc there. And then this took me to some residential area that was really nice, and I figured I'd just get some good carving footage here. And then I think this is all still Philly, but it's more residential here. You can see it's more suburbia. It's the outer burbs of Philly. It's actually a pretty nice neighborhood. It's one of the nicest neighborhoods I passed in Pennsylvania, because the rest of it was not nice. As you can see, I took a lot of footage coming up of some really bad neighborhoods that kind of look like ghost towns. Most of the roads in Philly were covered with railroad tracks because of all the trolleys that covered the city. And I did not take a single clip of those roads because I was so focused on not tripping over the railroad tracks and just dealing with the road conditions that I didn't want to be filming at the same time. That's why you don't see any of that footage in here. But the roads in Philly were all covered with railroad tracks. Okay, so here we're starting to get into these bad neighborhoods, and I start to just pan the camera around so you can see the the quality of the buildings here. They're not very good. The road's not that much better, but yeah, it just looks like a ghost town. Like all these abandoned. I don't even know if they're abandoned, but they looked abandoned. And some of these houses, they're sparsely put together, and there's a lot of empty lots. Like there. And it just it was very depressing actually when going through this town. I was like, how do people live here? But I guess you got the church, so everything's okay. That one is the nicest building in the entire in the entire town. By the way, that was sarcasm. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about this other than it was just a lot of these kinds of places in Pennsylvania. I passed another area after this that was trailer parks. I didn't film it at that point because it was kind of like a fast back road, and there was traffic there, so I needed to concentrate and not get a flat, which I did. I got the third flat passing through Pennsylvania. That was when I started panicking because I only had 3 spares, and thankfully one of the things that I didn't get on the 360 camera, but I did get it on Instagram, was a good Samaritan came over to my help and found me on Instagram, was following my story on Instagram, and he offered to meet me in Pennsylvania and give me some spare tubes, and he really saved the trip. He made it happen, because I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have those spare tubes that he gave me, because all I had was 3, and this was the third flat that I got in Pennsylvania, so I didn't have any more spares. I don't know if I would have had the courage to continue without any spares at that point. And although I could have, what I did actually end up buying a bicycle patch, and I suppose that would have kept me going. But in any case, it was a godsend, even though I'm an atheist. In case I say things like that, and he really saved the day, and I was very grateful. This is another shot that I was filming here because this was a huge factory. I don't even know what kind of factory it is, but it was endless. I was on this road next to this factory for what felt like forever. I don't know what it is, but it's right outside of Philly or in Philly, and it just goes on forever. And so I just decided to film it. And yeah, that was, and then after this, I hit the trailer parks, which I didn't film, and that's where I got the flat, and that's it. I think that was all of the footage that I got from Philly. One thing you'll notice is that I'm right-handed, and the remote is always on my left side, on my left hand. And I did this for the entire trip, except when I did the racetrack day. I kept the remote on my left hand side so I would have my right hand free to be able to use the camera or operate the phone with my dominant hand. And here we finally cross over to Delaware, Wilmington, Delaware. And you can see a stark difference between Pennsylvania and Delaware. I mean, it just looks like Disneyland. Look at this path. It's got a river on the left. It's got like the path is completely clean. It's got flowers. It's got gardens. The buildings are nice. Everything's well kept. I mean, what a difference a state border makes. But because I was just in Pennsylvania, we didn't look anything like that. And so this was actually one of the nicest footage I got because it was such a nice place to be, and it just changed my mindset completely. Where before I was kind of depressed, now I'm like feeling really happy to be on this trip and just enjoying the view and just taking it all in. Well, one of the beauties about the 360 camera is even though you're in it, you don't actually get to swivel your head around and look at everything while you're riding it. And I was able to do that with the 360 camera after the fact and just kind of like pan through and look at what was behind me, look at on the side, things that I didn't notice when I was actually riding because I was mostly looking forward, in 180 degrees forward, and I didn't see anything behind me or even to the side. So it was nice that I could enjoy these after the fact and just kind of pan through all the things that I might have missed when I actually did the ride. I was actually pretty surprised how long this trail was because I felt like it just kept going and going and going and it never ended. It connected one trail with another trail and it just kept going and it had all these like little props set up like that thing there on the side on a crane that was not really functional. It was just there for it's just like for decoration. And it was kind of nice. And this takes me to another path that you're gonna see in a little bit, which was really beautiful. I think they did a really great job in connecting all these paths together. You'll notice one of the things that I was doing throughout the trip was switching back and forth between regular stance and goofy stance. You couldn't tell which is my normal stance. My normal stance is to be goofy, but most of the time when I was filming in regular stance. And that was on purpose because I wanted the camera to be behind me on my right hand side. So I was riding regular so that could happen. Switching from one stance to the other really cut down on the number of times I had to stop because if I get tired, I would just switch my stance and I would be good to go. So my legs were never an issue thanks to the fact that I could switch my stance. So this was another path that it connected to, and it was actually an elevated path. So you can see I'm high above ground here, and there's like bridges and it's hardwood, and I think this is like a train station. I could be wrong, but it was very nice. It was a hot day, but I was really enjoying this ride here. And the funny thing is, like, out of all the hotels that I stayed in, the hotel here in Wilmington was really kind of the ugliest one, and it didn't really match the environment, right? Because Wilmington was so beautiful, and but the hotel itself was not that great. But I made it a point to only stay in cheap hotels, like $100 or less per night. And even though they were cheap hotels, they were pretty good for the most part. And so I can't really complain about the quality of the hotel, especially because I didn't have advanced reservations. I would just book them on the spot, because I didn't know ahead of time where I was going to be or where I was going to land. So here I kind of knew, because I kind of estimated 70 miles from where I was going to end up. So I made that my final destination to go to that hotel. And this is also another trail that he got connected to. And I think this is going to take me to my final destination, where I ended up in Wilmington, Delaware. Or just outside, actually not Wilmington, it was Brookhaven, Delaware, where I stayed, which is outside of Wilmington. This is already, I'm leaving Wilmington at this point here. And I'm going on to my destination at that hotel. And that was really the end of day 2. So the rest of this is just some more beautiful trails leading up to my final destination. So I will admit, at the end of this day 2, I don't know, I got emotional. And on this road right here, I remember specifically when I was on this trail, I started crying as I was riding the road. And I don't know exactly why. Maybe it was the exhaustion of the trip. Maybe it was just the struggle of getting flats and getting lost, going through depressing areas, and then a stark difference going into like these beautiful trails. And it just all came together here, and I just became overwhelmed with emotion, and I was crying. I you can't tell because I'm just you're getting the back view, but I'm crying at this point. I'm really crying, and it's not tears. It's tears of joy. It's tears of just this natural euphoria of the road. It's a feeling that I had never felt before, other than when I've been on mushrooms, but I didn't do any drugs. I didn't do anything. It was just the euphoria of being on this trip and on being on this road that I got emotional from. That was the end of day 2. And this now is the morning of day 3. I'm already taking off. And I think most of the footage that you're going to see on day 3 is probably just a little bit in Delaware, but most of it is in Maryland. And I didn't even notice when I crossed over from one state to the other. It was Friday, and all Friday I rode in Delaware. I'm sorry, in Maryland. And I remember the weather changed. You could see the overcast skies, and actually at this point it was drizzling on me, and it was very fresh. I felt like I was cold. I brought a windbreaker with me, but I didn't want to stop and put it on. I just kept riding, even though I was cold at this point. I think it was like 60, in the 60s, like mid 60s Fahrenheit. And it just felt great, because after 2 days of intense heat, I felt like this is the right kind of weather. I mean, 70-degree weather or 60-degree weather is just perfect, right? Even though I was a little bit cold, it was perfect. I felt like I could just keep on riding forever. And I had been riding for about 70 miles a day. And the way I was doing this is I was doing 3 legs with the 2 charging stops in between. So that's an average of 20-25 miles per leg. But on this day, I I did a lot more. I did 30-mile legs because of the weather. The weather was so nice. I just kept switching my stance and resting my legs, and I was good to go. And the battery was very good on this board. It could have gotten me up to 40 miles if I was riding slow. So anywhere between 35 and 40 miles. Obviously, I didn't want to push it too much because I didn't want to get stranded in the middle of nowhere. So I was only doing up to 30 miles. But 30 miles is a lot. 30 miles is more than 2 hours riding continuously. And it's a lot. So you do need a break at that point. And but yeah, that would have been actually this day. I think I did 85 miles altogether. So 30, and then I think I did 25 at the end. And here I'm crossing over a bridge, and this was interesting because the navigation system on Apple Maps kept throwing me like on the 25-mile detour north, and I was wondering why. And it was because of this bridge. Obviously, this bridge doesn't have a bike path. It only has 2 lanes. And when I put it on Google Maps, it put me straight through it. So I guess Google Map has more updated information, because if you notice the cones, what they did is they dedicated the entire right lane for bicycles. That's why I'm taking the whole lane, because there was no bicycles around. It was just me. I had the whole lane to myself, and all the cars were on the left, which was great because I didn't have to take that huge detour. This was a beautiful, beautiful bridge, and it was quite long. And even though I had the entire lane, you see the trailer trucks just passing me by, and that felt kind of scary, just having all this traffic coming through. But it was a beautiful ride, and on the other end was my stop, which was a coffee shop in this really picturesque town called Harvard Grace, I think it was called, in Maryland. And yeah, that was basically the best day for riding so far. It was Friday. The next day, Saturday, was also good. It was kind of the same weather, but I didn't ride nearly as much because I rode so much on this day that it put me really close to DC. And as a matter of fact, I could have gotten there on this day if I did an extra leg. But I would have been riding at night, and I didn't want to do that. So I kept it at just 3 legs, like I've been doing for the whole trip, and 85 miles for this day. So I'll talk a little bit about my choice of skateboard that I used for this trip, which I haven't mentioned at all. They didn't sponsor me. I obviously just did everything on my own and paid for everything myself. I chose the Ownboard Bamboo Zeus Pro, which is a mouthful, but it's basically a bamboo board with a 13S 5P battery pack. It's a big battery pack, but it's not the biggest. It's not the biggest battery pack that I own. I have another skateboard that has a 12S 8P, which is a much larger battery pack. Oh yeah, this is a nice, beautiful scene here. After I charged, I went over to the water and just there's a waterfront there with a boardwalk, and I just took it in a little bit before I continued on my second leg of the day. But going back to skateboard, the reason I picked this board instead of the other one that had a larger battery is because what's more important than the battery? Well, it's not obvious, but the charger. The charger is actually more important for this kind of trip than the battery. And this is the only skateboard that comes, well, that I own anyway, that comes with a quick charger. So this allowed me to, pretty much charge it almost to full in 2 hours. So I would ride for 2 hours, and I would stop and charge for 2 hours. If I had taken the other board that comes with a regular 5 amp charger, that would have taken twice as long to charge fully, and so it would have been worse, I think. So yeah, the charger is very important, and the trade off there is that it's a huge brick, and that was most of the weight of my backpack was that charger, even though the backpack itself was kind of heavy. But yeah, and also there were other advantages for this skateboard. It has the largest motors that I have, which is important because I expected August to be very hot, and the first 2 days were certainly hot, and I didn't have to worry that the motors were going to overheat because they're actually just I touched them and they were just lukewarm to the touch. So it was a good choice, and it got me where I needed to be. I chose the 7-inch tires, pneumatic tires, which the drawback was obvious. I was going to get flats, and that almost ended the trip for me. I got so many flats. But it was the right choice to make. I just needed to bring more spares. If I would not have been able to do this on normal urethane skateboard wheels because I would have been ejected at least twice that I can remember on the trip, if not more, or at least had to run off the board if I was not on these 7-inch pneumatic tires. You just don't know what kind of terrain you're going to encounter. Most of the terrain obviously was rideable, but in the city especially, there was all kinds of potholes, there were railroad tracks, and then even here on these back roads, eventually, every now and then you hit a small bridge that has like these metal slabs just sticking out and you don't see them. Or you're riding on the shoulder and you get those bumps that alert sleepy drivers that they're on the shoulder, and they are really, really tall bumps, and it's really tough to ride through them on AT wheels. You can't actually do it on urethane wheels. Hey guys, I brought the speaker, but I never put it on, so I don't know how this is gonna come out. Here's the workhorse doing well. Almost at my last stop. I was also thinking of just bringing tubeless tires, which I had, but I sold them right before I took this trip, so I wasn't able to take them. That would have been a good choice too, although in one of the flats I had a big nail in there, so I would have had to look for a bike shop. The good news is that with those tires you can ride them flat, pretty much the whole way, and it won't impact the riding experience. But it would have gotten me to where I needed to be, and then just put some like sealant into tire, and I would have been good to go. So that would have been an easier thing to do, and maybe in the future, if I have a chance to get more tubeless tires, yeah, I think for this kind of trip, that would definitely be beneficial. The drawback with tubeless tires is that they're not as comfortable, and I think that was a big help. The fact that I was on a flexible deck and had pneumatic tires made it so that I could ride such long distance without stopping, and my legs didn't get tired. The thing that got me the most tired was the backpack and my neck and shoulder. That's what really was the biggest drawback here of this setup. So this was the end of the third day. I ended up staying in this place called Columbia, Maryland. And this shot right here is already at the morning of Saturday, which is the fourth day. So we jumped over overnight, and it was a very nice hotel that I stayed at, and the trails here were all beautiful. From this point forward, I was only 32 miles away from my destination in Washington, D.C., which is the next hotel I was going to stay in. And so I decided to do everything in one leg, the entire 32 miles. What I didn't realize was it was just this little bit of road that I had to cover, and then it put me on these trails, this network of trails that are that are all connected. And it basically connects most of the way all the way down to downtown DC, and I assume it keeps going through Washington DC, and I don't know how far it goes, but it's a whole network of trails. They've done an awesome job with the setup in Washington DC, and because they were all connected, it was very easy to get there, and I didn't have to take the road. So I was actually taking it very easy here. Once I hit the trails, I was very comfortable, and that allowed me to do the entire 32 miles with 2 bars left on the battery, which is a lot. That means I could have, at that pace, I could have pushed the battery to 40 miles if I wanted to. But yeah, that was basically the last day of riding here, and all the footage that you see from here on out is all in the trails inside this network of connected trails that lead you all the way downtown DC. And I didn't actually have to ride any streets inside DC. I just took trail, and it took me right like a couple of blocks from where the hotel was, which was very convenient.
Right onto Anacostia Tributary Trail System, Northeast Branch Trail, then turn right onto...
I love these aerial shots that you can do with the 360 cam. It looks like a drone is following you all the way. The closer I got, the more busy this trail became, and you start to see more bicycles, you start to see more pedestrians, people walking their dogs and whatnot, and it's just you're entering closer and closer into the city. Here in this next shot, this is really the final shot before I get out of the trail path and directly into my hotel. And you can see here now we're in a very urban environment where there's a lot of people walking the path, and there's a lot of buildings around, and it just looks very different. And I didn't realize how close I was to the hotel until I actually got out of the trail and right into the hotel. And that was pretty much the end of the journey here. Although there is a little bit more, because I was there for an esk8 event called Groundings, which I'll put a little bit more footage of next. Here's a puppy.
Yeah, Chihuahua.
He's like a puppy. Oh, he's not a puppy?
Yeah, she's a puppy.
Okay, cool.
A Chihuahua pup, 13 weeks old.
What are you doing?
Her name is Nora.
Oh, man.
She's a rider, we can ride.
We gotta get a helmet, man. That looks so
Yeah,
cute.
she has a helmet, doesn't quite fit her yet. She's so tiny.
And get a picture and make a whole Instagram page for her. Okay, so this is now the event that I was there to attend. It's called Groundings, and it was basically organized by a bunch of different esk8 organizations in Washington, D.C. And as you can see, it's very well attended. There's a ton of people that show up for this event, and not just from DC, but from all over the world. And I had just gotten there that morning, charged for 2 hours, checked into my hotel, and then decided to do the next ride, which is the ride they called, what was the name of this ride? It was called, the Mansions ride, which was basically a tour around the Washington DC mansions. There was actually a lot of rides that day and into the night, the whole day of Saturday, but I was not planning to do any more rides. This because I had already done 32 miles that morning, and I was just going to do this one ride and get some footage of people riding, as you can see here, and then call it a day. So that's what I did. I wish I had more energy and I would have been able to record more, but I just needed to go back to the hotel, jump in the pool, take a shower, watch some TV, watch some fights, and just have a drink. But I met a lot of wonderful people at this event, and I made a lot of friends. None of my New York City friends showed up. A lot of them said that they were going to come down, but I ended up not seeing anybody there from New York City, so it wasn't really well represented. But there was people there from all over, from North Carolina, from Cleveland, and from all over the states, really. Yeah, they really have a good organization going on down there, and the place that they hosted it in, it was really beautiful, and it was like a PEV heaven, personal electric vehicle heaven. And so the rest of this is just kind of just footage of us doing the group ride, and I've already made a video of this, but I'll put the rest of the footage on here and just let you see what it's like to be in a group ride in case you've never experienced that before. And as you can see, there's not a lot of skateboards. There's a lot more electric unicycles than anything else, and then there's scooters, electric bicycles, and I think fourth you see electric skateboards. And that could have been because of this particular ride. I think there were other rides that were hosted by or more geared for skateboards, but I obviously didn't plan to attend any more rides, so I don't know what those look like. But this was a fun ride. It was a little bit slow because of all the amount of people that were here, and it was meant for kind of beginners, so that they didn't want to go too fast, which was fine. It was great. I love riding slow and carving, and just in this case just getting footage of people, and it's a really nice feeling, just being with like-minded people who share the same passion that you do. And it's you can see here it's a family event. You'll see later on in the footage, whoa, that guy was cool, jumping up over every bump. And so you can see later on in the footage there's like a whole family riding electric unicycles, including this tiny little kid who's riding this small unicycle. I don't know, they made it for kids. I guess it's an adult one, but it's kind of tiny. It fit him perfectly. But you'll see it later on in the footage. So I'm just gonna let it roll and let you enjoy the group ride. Here's that kid I was telling about earlier. And it's such a nice family portrait there. You see the two parents in the background riding their electric unicycles and the kid in front of them. It was an amazing experience, I want to say. And if you made it this far, congratulations. My hat's off to you. You are a true esk8 enthusiast. It was a long video, and I appreciate you sticking around till the end. And I don't know that there's much more to tell other than I can't emphasize enough how what a beautiful experience this was for me. I wish more people could do it. If you want to join me in my next adventure, hit me up, send me a comment, let me know what you think. Hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.